Chapters 10 and 11 from 10 Days in a Madhouse by Nellie Bly. This is recorded to celebrate the 10th anniversary of LibriVox. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. 10 Days in a Madhouse by Nellie Bly. Chapter 10, My First Supper. This examination over, we heard someone yell, "Go out into the hall." One of the patients kindly explained that this was an invitation to supper. We latecomers tried to keep together, so we entered the hall and stood at the door where all the women had crowded. How we shivered as we stood there! The windows were open, and the draught went whizzing through the hall. The patients looked blue with cold, and the minutes stretched into a quarter of an hour. At last one of the nurses went forward and unlocked a door, through which we all crowded to a landing of the stairway. Here again came a long halt, directly before an open window. "How very imprudent for the attendants to keep these thinly clad women standing here in the cold," said Miss Neville. I looked at the poor crazy captives shivering, and added emphatically, "It's horribly brutal." While they stood there, I thought I would not relish supper that night. They looked so lost and hopeless. Some were chattering nonsense to invisible persons, others were laughing or crying aimlessly, and one old gray-haired woman was nudging me, and with winks and sage noddings of the head and pitiful uplifting of the eyes and hands, was assuring me that I must not mind the poor creatures, as they were all mad. "Stop at the heater," was then ordered, "and get in line 2 by 2. Mary, get a companion. How many times must I tell you to keep in line? Stand still." And as the orders were issued, a shove and a push were administered, and often a slap on the ears. After this third and final halt, we were marched into a long, narrow dining room, where a rush was made for the table. The table reached the length of the room, and was uncovered and uninviting. Long benches without backs were put for the patients to sit on, and over these they had to crawl in order to face the table. Placed close together all along the table were large dressing bowls filled with a pinkish-looking stuff which the patients called tea. By each bowl was laid a piece of bread, cut thick and buttered. A small saucer containing 5 prunes accompanied the bread. One fat woman made a rush, and jerking up several saucers from those around her, emptied their contents into her own saucer. Then, while holding to her own bowl, she lifted up another and drained its contents at one gulp. This she did to a second bowl in shorter time than it takes to tell it. Indeed, I was so amused at her successful grabbings that when I looked at my own share, the woman opposite, without so much as by your leave, grabbed my bread and left me without any. Another patient, seeing this, kindly offered me hers, but I declined with thanks, and turned to the nurse and asked for more. As she flung a thick piece down on the table, she made some remark about the fact that if I forgot where my home was, I had not forgotten how to eat. I tried the bread, but the butter was so horrible that one could not eat it. A blue-eyed German girl on the opposite side of the table told me I could have bread unbuttered if I wished, and that very few were able to eat the butter. I turned my attention to the prunes, and found that very few of them would be sufficient. A patient near asked me to give them to her. I did so. My bowl of tea was all that was left. I tasted, and one taste was enough. It had no sugar, and it tasted as if it had been made in copper. It was as weak as water. This was also transferred to a hungrier patient, in spite of the protest of Miss Neville. "You must force the food down," she said, "else you will be sick, and who knows but what, with these surroundings, you may go crazy. To have a good brain, the stomach must be cared for." "It is impossible for me to eat that stuff," I replied, and despite all her urging, I ate nothing that night. It did not require much time for the patients to consume all that was eatable on the table, and then we got our orders to form in line in the hall. When this was done, the doors before us were unlocked, and we were ordered to proceed back to the sitting room. Many of the patients crowded near us, and I was again urged to play, both by them and by the nurses. To please the patients, I promised to play, and Miss Tilly Maynard was to sing. The first thing she asked me to play was Rock-a-Bye Baby, and I did so. She sang it beautifully. Chapter 11. In the Bath. A few more songs, and we were told to go with Miss Grupe. We were taken into a cold, wet bathroom, and I was ordered to undress. Did I protest? Well, I never grew so earnest in my life as when I tried to beg off. They said if I did not, they would use force, and that it would not be very gentle. At this I noticed one of the craziest women in the ward standing by the filled bathtub, with a large discoloured rag in her hands. She was chattering away to herself, and chuckling in a manner which seemed to me fiendish. I knew now what was to be done with me. I shivered. They began to undress me, and one by one they pulled off my clothes. At last everything was gone, excepting one garment. "I will not remove it," I said vehemently, but they took it off. I gave one glance at the group of patients gathered at the door watching the scene, and I jumped into the bathtub with more energy than grace. The water was ice cold, and again I began to protest. How useless it all was! I begged at least that the patients be made to go away, but was ordered to shut up. The crazy woman began to scrub me. I can find no other word that will express it but scrubbing. From a small tin pan she took some soft soap and rubbed it all over me, even all over my face and my pretty hair. I was at last past seeing or speaking, although I had begged that my hair be left untouched. Rub, rub, rub went the old woman, chattering to herself. My teeth chattered, and my limbs were goose-fleshed and blue with cold. Suddenly I got, one after the other, 3 buckets of water over my head, ice-cold water too, into my eyes, my ears, my nose, and my mouth. I think I experienced some of the sensations of a drowning person, as they dragged me, gasping, shivering, and quaking, from the tub. For once I did look insane. I caught a glance of the indescribable look on the faces of my companions who had witnessed my fate and knew theirs was surely following. Unable to control myself at the absurd picture I presented, I burst into roars of laughter. They put me, dripping wet, into a short canton flannel slip, labelled across the extreme end in large black letters, Lunatic Asylum, B.I. H. 6. The letters meant Blackwell's Island, Hall 6. By this time Miss Maynard had been undressed, and much as I hated my recent bath, I would have taken another if by it I could have saved her the experience. Imagine plunging that sick girl into a cold bath, when it made me, who have never been ill, shake as if with ague. I heard her explain to Miss Grupe that her head was still sore from her illness. Her hair was short and had mostly come out, and she asked that the crazy woman be made to rub more gently. But Miss Grupe said, "There isn't much fear of hurting you. Shut up, or you'll get it worse." Miss Maynard did shut up, and that was my last look at her for the night. I was hurried into a room where there were 6 beds, and had been put into bed when someone came along and jerked me out again, saying, "Nellie Brown has to be put in a room alone to-night, for I suppose she's noisy." I was taken to room 28, and left to try and make an impression on the bed. It was an impossible task. The bed had been made high in the centre and sloping on either side. At the first touch my head flooded the pillow with water, and my wet slip transferred some of its dampness to the sheet. When Miss Grupe came in, I asked if I could not have a nightgown. "We have not such things in this institution," she said. "I do not like to sleep without," I replied. "Well, I don't care about that," she said. "You are in a public institution now, and you can't expect to get anything. This is charity, and you should be thankful for what you get." "But the city pays to keep these places up," I urged, "and pays people to be kind to the unfortunates brought here." "Well, you needn't expect any kindness here, for you won't get it," she said, and she went out and closed the door. A sheet and an oilcloth were under me, and a sheet and a black wool blanket above. I never felt anything so annoying as that wool blanket, as I tried to keep it around my shoulders to stop the chills from getting underneath. When I pulled it up, I left my feet bare, and when I pulled it down, my shoulders were exposed. There was absolutely nothing in the room but the bed and myself. As the door had been locked, I imagined I should be left alone for the night, but I heard the sound of heavy tread of 2 women down the hall. They stopped at every door, unlocked it, and in a few moments I could hear them relock it. This they did without the least attempt at quietness down the whole length of the opposite side of the hall and up to my room. Here they paused, the key was inserted in the lock and turned. I watched those about to enter. In they came, dressed in brown and white striped dresses, fastened by brass buttons, large white aprons, and a heavy green cord about the waist, from which dangled a bunch of large keys, and small white caps on their heads. Being dressed as worthy attendants of the day, I knew they were nurses. The first one carried a lantern, and she flashed its light into my face, while she said to her assistant, "This is Nellie Brown." Looking at her, I asked, "Who are you?" "The night nurse, my dear," she replied, and wishing that I would sleep well, she went out and locked the door after her. Several times during the night they came into my room, and even had I been able to sleep, the unlocking of the heavy door, their loud talking and heavy tread would have awakened me. I could not sleep, so I lay in bed, picturing to myself the horrors in case a fire should break out in the asylum. Every door is locked separately, and the windows are heavily barred so that escape is impossible. In the one building alone there are, I think Dr. Ingram told me, some 300 women. They are locked, 1 to 10 to a room. It is impossible to get out unless these doors are unlocked. A fire is not improbable, but one of the most likely occurrences. Should the building burn, the jailers or nurses would never think of releasing their crazy patients. This I can prove to you later when I come to tell of the cruel treatment of the poor things entrusted to their care. As I say, in case of fire, not a dozen women would escape. All would be left to roast to death. Even if the nurses were kind, which they are not, it would require more presence of mind than women of their class possess to risk the flames and their own lives while they unlocked the 100 doors for the insane prisoners. Unless there is a change, there will some day be a tale of horror never equaled. In this connection is an amusing incident which happened just previous to my release. I was talking with Dr. Ingram about many things, and at last told him what I thought would be the result of a fire. "The nurses are expected to open the doors," he said. "But you know positively that they would not wait to do that," I said, "and these women would burn to death." He sat silent, unable to contradict my assertion. "Why don't you have it changed?" I asked. "What can I do?" he replied. "I offer suggestions until my brain is tired, but what good does it do?" "What would you do?" he asked, turning to me, the proclaimed insane girl. "Well, I should insist on having them have locks put in, as I've seen in some places, that by turning a crank at the end of the hall you can lock or unlock every door on the one side. Then there would be some chance of escape. Now, every door being locked separately, there is absolutely none." Dr. Ingram turned to me with an anxious look on his kind face, as he asked slowly, "Nellie Brown, what institution have you been an inmate of before you came here?" "None. I was never confined in any institution except boarding school in my life." "Where, then, did you see the locks you have described?" "I had seen them in the new Western Penitentiary at Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, but I did not dare say so. I merely answered, "Oh, I have seen them in a place I was in, I mean as a visitor." "There is only one place I know of where they have those locks," he said sadly, "and that is at Sing Sing." The inference is conclusive. I laughed very heartily over the implied accusation, and tried to assure him that I had never up to date been an inmate of Sing Sing, or even visited it. Just as the morning began to dawn, I went to sleep. It did not seem many moments until I was rudely awakened and told to get up, the window being opened and my clothing pulled off me. My hair was still wet, and I had pains all through me, as if I had the rheumatism. Some clothing was flung on the floor, and I was told to put it on. I asked for my own, but was told to take what I got and keep quiet, by the apparently head nurse, Miss Grady. I looked at it. One underskirt, made of coarse dark cotton goods, and a cheap white calico dress with a black spot in it. I tied the strings of the skirt around me, and put on the little dress. It was made, as are all those worn by the patients, into a straight tight waist sewed on to a straight skirt. As I buttoned the waist, I noticed the underskirt was about 6 inches longer than the upper, and for a moment I sat down on the bed and laughed at my own appearance. No woman ever longed for a mirror more than I did at the moment. I saw the other patients hurrying past in the hall, so I decided not to lose anything that might be going on. We numbered 45 patients in Hall 6, and were sent to the bathroom, where there were 2 coarse towels. I watched crazy patients who had the most dangerous eruptions all over their faces dry on the towels, and then saw women with clean skins turn to use them. I went to the bathtub and washed my face at the running faucet, and my underskirt did duty for a towel. Before I had completed my ablutions, a bench was brought into the bathroom. Miss Gruppe and Miss McCartan came in with combs in their hands. We were told to sit down on the bench, and the hair of 45 women was combed, with 1 patient, 2 nurses, and 6 combs. As I saw some of the sore heads combed, I thought this was another dose I had not bargained for. Miss Tilly Maynard had her own comb, but it was taken from her by Miss Grady. Oh, that combing! I never realized before what the expression, "I'll give you a combing," meant, but I knew then. My hair, all matted and wet from the night previous, was pulled and jerked, and after expostulating to no avail, I set my teeth and endured the pain. They refused to give me my hairpins, and my hair was arranged in 1 plait and tied with a red cotton rag. My curly bangs refused to stay back, so that at least was left of my former glory. After this we went to the sitting room, and I looked for my companions. At first I looked vainly, unable to distinguish them from the other patients, but after a while I recognized Miss Maynard by her short hair. "How did you sleep after your cold bath?" "I almost froze, and then the noise kept me awake. It's dreadful. My nerves were so unstrung before I came here, and I fear I shall not be able to stand the strain." I did the best I could to cheer her. I asked that we be given additional clothing, at least as much as custom says women shall wear, but they told me to shut up, that we had as much as they intended to give us. We were compelled to get up at 5:30 o'clock, and at 7:15 we were told to collect in the hall, where the experience of waiting, as on the evening previous, was repeated. When we got to the dining room at last, we found a bowl of cold tea, a slice of buttered bread, and a saucer of oatmeal with molasses on it for each patient. I was hungry, but the food would not down. I asked for unbuttered bread, and was given it. I cannot tell you of anything which is the same dirty black colour. It was hard, and in places nothing more than dried dough. I found a spider in my slice, so I did not eat it. I tried the oatmeal and molasses, but it was wretched, and so I endeavoured, but without much show of success, to choke down the tea. After we were back to the sitting room, a number of women were ordered to make the beds, and some of the patients were put to scrubbing, and others given different duties which covered all the work in the hall. It is not the attendants who keep the institution so nice for the poor patients, as I had always thought, but the patients who do it all themselves, even to cleaning the nurses' bedrooms and caring for their clothing. About 9:30 the new patients, of which I was one, were told to go out to see the doctor. I was taken in, and my lungs and my heart were examined by the flirty young doctor who was the first to see us the day we entered. The one who made out the report, if I mistake not, was the Assistant Superintendent Ingram. A few questions, and I was allowed to return to the sitting-room. I came in and saw Miss Grady with my notebook and long lead pencil, bought just for the occasion. "I want my book and pencil," I said, quite truthfully. "It helps me remember things." I was very anxious to get it to make notes in, and was disappointed when she said, "You can't have it, so shut up." Some days after I asked Dr. Ingram if I could have it, and he promised to consider the matter. When I again referred to it, he said that Miss Grady said I only brought a book there, and that I had no pencil. I was provoked, and insisted that I had, whereupon I was advised to fight against the imaginations of my brain. After the housework was completed by the patients, and as the day was fine but cold, we were told to go out in the hall and get on shawls and hats for a walk. Poor patients! How eager they were for a breath of air! How eager for a slight release from their prison! They went swiftly into the hall, and there was a skirmish for hats. Such hats! End of chapters 10 and 11 of 10 Days in a Madhouse by Nellie Bly. Read by Maria Casper.